Hello, everybody, and welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Monday, October the 7th, 2024. On the show tonight, do Canadians actually have property rights? Are they enshrined in the Constitution of our country? Can the government just come along and take away your property whenever they choose to, without even enacting any laws or bylaws or mandates or anything like that? Can they just say, you know what? I think I want this piece of land back. Do we even own the land we have anyway? When you buy a car, for example, well, let's say you're paying on it for 5 years. So you're making payments on your car for 5 years. And after 5 years, you're finally done making payments and you own that car outright. Yes, you're still paying insurance on it and you pay for the upkeep, obviously, gasoline. But are you paying any taxes to the government on your car after you've taken outright ownership of it? The answer to that is no, right? Same with anything else. TV set, couch. But what about property? After you pay your mortgage for 20, 25 years, or these days, I guess 40, 50 years even. I understand banks are now giving out 50-year mortgages, which flies in the face completely of global warming and climate change, but that's a whole other topic. 50-year mortgage is ridiculous. But let's say you pay off your mortgage after 20, 25 years. You've been working hard. You've been very diligent about that. You're still paying property tax to the government. Why? Isn't that interesting? Do we actually own the land we think we own? We're going to get into that. And the reason that comes up is because we had another fantastic gathering this past weekend, thanks to Ken Drysdale and the gang with Manitoba Stronger together. It was in Selkirk at the Rec Center. About 300 or so people turned up to hear all about Winnipeg Metropolitan Region Plan 2050. And we're going to be back at it next Saturday at the Niverville Friendship Center in Niverville. And I'll see you guys there along with Ken and the entire crew, Rosalie, everybody. And we invite everybody from that RM and surrounding RMs to come out and hear about what the government plans to do, possibly, with your land. That's why people are coming out. Obviously, they want to know if the government can take your land. We're going to go into, do you own your land? Are there property rights in Canada? What is Allodial title and more in the first 10 minutes of the show tonight, which is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.ca. Had a tough weekend raking the grass or working out or whatever it is you were doing physically? You need Recover Muscle Cream, my friend. Experience the ultimate comfort and relaxation as Recover works its magic, formulated with cutting-edge technology. The advanced muscle cream provides unparalleled relief, catering to your unique needs. Are you tired of battling muscle soreness after intense workouts or long days? Are you in search of a solution that provides unparalleled comfort and relaxation? CanadaNanoSilver.com proudly presents Recover Silver Biotics Revolutionary Muscle Cream, designed to be your powerful ally in soothing tired muscles and helping you to conquer each day with ease. Recover Muscle Cream, just one of the many awesome products you can find on the website here at CanadaNanoSilver.com. CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you're looking for a retail location near you, you can find one right here on the retail locations tab. There are 30 scattered all across the country: Alberta, BC, Manitoba, Newfoundland, Ontario, Quebec, and Saskatchewan. And if you would like to become a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Something else that was brought to my attention this past weekend. I like to talk to as many people as I possibly can. You folks who turn up for these events, you are the lifeblood of this show and shows like it across the country. And I was having a great conversation with Dorothy. By the way, Justin and Dorothy, thank you very much for this. The words in here, I'm not going to read them here on the show, but personal message from me to both of you. It's messages like that that keep me personally going through all of this. That and getting the chance to come out and meet such incredible people. It was brought to my attention by Dorothy and a couple of other people that everybody in the room in Selkirk on Saturday was of a certain age. Probably, I'm going to be generous here and say 40, 45 plus. We did have a few younger people. And so that encouraged me to give a talk before Ken Drysdale gave his presentation regarding the Winnipeg Metropolitan Region Plan 2050 about trying to encourage younger people to get involved with this movement, because after all, that's who we're fighting for. And really, if it's only going to be just us doing it, then all the cabal's got to do is wait for another 20, 25 years until we're all gone, and then they take over completely. And I said, where's the Charlie Kirks of the world in Canada? We need a Charlie Kirk type person in Canada. Yes, I know we have Students Against Mandates. Cassandra is doing a fantastic job. She was supposed to be on the show this coming Thursday, but she had to postpone. There's another incredible young man named Caden that I met this weekend. He even came up and addressed the crowd, and I encouraged him to develop his own channel, develop his own network, and get the word out about all of this nonsense that's going on that we are trying to fight amongst people of his own age. Because, yeah, I'll sit here and admit, I'm an older dude, man. I stopped liking new music 15 years ago. If you ask me who the big stars of music are today, I couldn't tell you. And that's pretty much a barometer of how with it you are. Who's famous these days? Actors? I don't know. I mean, I still think of Tom Hanks. I know exactly, but that's who I think of. That was a movie star from my generation. And the 80s rock bands and the 90s rock bands were my generation. Yeah, I kept liking new music up until about 2010, but after that, I didn't care anymore. There was no more rock and roll left. It was just pop and rap and all of that stuff. So how do we cut through to the younger people? We need the younger people to cut through to the younger people. Here's a great snapshot of just that.
I moved from Canada, and I can say one thing. America is great. Canada is screwed up. And I'm wondering, because obviously if Kamala's elected, I think we're going to be Canada 2.0.
Yeah, that's right.
What would you do if you were Prime Minister of Canada right now?
I would deport Justin Trudeau the first day in office. That guy sucks. Canada's a real problem, man. I mean, because you have, I would basically allow Alberta to become its own country.
I lived in Alberta too, so
yeah. Edmonton or
Calgary.
Yeah, the two best parts of Canada are Edmonton and Calgary. Beautiful country too. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Canada's a really screwed up country, and it's a self-hating country, as you well know, that prides itself on being polite. And this is a great lesson for those of us in the West, that your favorable characteristics of being polite, nice, and welcoming can.
And
Hold it. You guys tell me there's no sound on this? How can that be? All the sound is up. Let me go through this again, because we need to have the sound. If you guys can't hear this, then there's no point in even playing it. So let's check this out. Audio working? Audio should be up. Oh, so there's only one person that said the audio is not working. Well, maybe it's your fault then. Maybe you're the one who needs to turn on your sound. Now I have to start this video right from the top. Is it even still available? Did I get rid of it? Anyway, it's Charlie Kirk talking about how terrible Canada is because we're all too nice and we're all too polite, and we take such pride in being polite that we won't stand up against the bad guys when the time comes. We won't stand up against mass immigration for fear of being called bigots and racists, ultimately. But the point of that matter was engaging young people. And so I put it on everybody who was at the gathering in Selkirk this past weekend to have that conversation, that difficult conversation with their kids. Because if we're all between the age of 40 and 65 or even 70, our kids are between 20 and 40 years old. And they will hopefully inherit our land one day. And they need to know what's going on. So they need to turn up. And again, I'm not saying there were no young people there, because there were. What I am saying is that we need more of them in order to be successful with this. That's what we need. And if they're worried about being called names by their peers, in their friendship groups, right? Or online or at work or whatever it is, well, then they need to get over that. And they need to get over that very quickly. And as far as them thinking you're crazy, here's something that I didn't address in Selkirk on Saturday. And that is this: you're still their mom. You're still their dad. And you still carry weight. You still resonate in their heads. And when you say, I'm the guy that taught you how to ride that bike, I'm the guy that taught you how to drive that car, I'm the guy that taught you to shave, I'm still that guy. And what I'm telling you today has got as a matter of fact, it's got even more power behind it than what I taught you when you were a little kid. So you will listen. Plus, you have your will. And you can hold that over their heads. Whatever it takes, you guys. But we do need to start having these difficult conversations. We can't let them off the hook when it comes to attending these events. Are you coming to the event on Saturday? Well, I can't get a babysitter. Come to the event. I'll see you there. It starts at 1:00. Period. I don't want to hear any more arguing about it. We need to get all the kids involved. All right. I asked a question on social media earlier this afternoon. Let's see where it is now. Oh, because of that one person who couldn't hear everything. Now my entire screen is all screwed up. So let me see if I can do this again here. Bing. All right. So here we go. We're going to bring this up on the screen for you guys right now. The question I had on the Facebook page earlier today was, what percent of Canadians do still trust the left-wing corporate media? The CRTC report shows trust in Canadian news media has hit an all-time low. Last year, in 2023, it was about 38%. What is it now? What do you think it is now? Just throw it up in the comment section. What percentage of people trust the left-wing corporate media in 2024? According to this new internal study done by the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission, unelected Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission. Barb says 15%, Edna says 30%, Michael says 20 to 25%, 30% Lulu, Monica says 20%, Dale says about 25%. You guys are pretty close. Remember last year it was 38%. What about on Rumble? What are you guys saying on Rumble? Esky Dog says, I quit watching mainstream media way back around 2010. Good for you. You go, girl, 19%. Starliner says 26%. Vilma says 30%. Dog Park Lady says 35%. All right, let's roll this down and see exactly what it's at. Fewer Canadians trust news media, says in-house CRTC research. Blacklock's reporter says the latest data follows StatsCan figures showing journalists are considered less trustworthy than politicians or police these days. Fewer Canadians express trust in news media, said the CRTC report. 3 in 10, 32% trust the information provided by news media in Canada to be accurate and impartial, and are satisfied with the quality of information and analysis offered by Canadian news media. That's 31%. Trust ratings had fallen since last year, wrote researchers. Fewer express trust in news media, down 4 points compared to 2023, and satisfaction with the quality of news coverage down 6 points, they wrote. That is absolutely incredible. However, we do know that they're following a game plan. Here is Professor Brett Weinstein with more.
Mockingbird was the project of the deep state to control us via the media. But it worked much better in an era where there were 3 broadcast networks. You didn't have to control that many properties. The reason that the narrative broke was because Goliath was focused on controlling the mainstream media properties, and it didn't think it had to care about the off Joe Rogan man cave stuff. Why should it care what a podcast was? Who cares what gets said on pirate radio, right? But that mattered a lot because people, when they realized they were being lied to and they were doing harm to themselves because of those lies, tuned out the mainstream media and they started searching for information elsewhere. The punchline is, if you want to beat the deep state, what you need to do is you need to drag Goliath onto territory he doesn't understand. That's where we win.
Boom! He's absolutely correct. So look, guys, I'm going to play you the Charlie Kirk thing again. I feel bad we didn't get through the entire thing. And it goes back to my conversation about getting younger people involved. We need a Charlie Kirk North. And I wonder, because, you know, we've had all these seminars from these big American names come through Canada in the past couple of years. We've had all the doctors come through, but we need people. And we've had Tucker Carlson come through. And I think that's fantastic. But we need Charlie Kirk to come up here and inspire some young people. He goes on university campuses and gets absolutely lambasted, not mentally, just rudely called names by much of the student population down there. But all he does is speak facts, and he's incredibly knowledgeable as well for a guy with only a high school diploma, no university education whatsoever. So here's the entire Charlie Kirk thing once again for you.
Kamal is elected. I think we're going to be Canada 2.0.
Yeah, that's right.
What would you do if you... I recently moved from Canada, and I can say one thing. America is great. Canada is screwed up. And I'm wondering, because obviously if Kamal is elected, I think we're going to be Canada 2.0.
Yeah, that's right.
What would you do if you were Prime Minister of Canada right now?
I would deport Justin Trudeau the first day in office. That guy sucks. Canada's a real problem, man. I mean, because you have, I would basically allow Alberta to become its own country.
I lived in Alberta too, so
yeah. Edmonton or
Calgary.
Yeah, the two best parts of Canada are Edmonton and Calgary. Beautiful country too. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Canada's a really screwed up country, and it's a self-hating country, as you well know, that prides itself on being polite. And this is a great lesson for those of us in the West, that your favorable characteristics of being polite, nice, and welcoming can also be your downfall. And you know that in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Super polite, okay, we're just going to allow a bunch of foreigners over on our country. Super polite, we're not going to allow anyone, we're not going to have free speech. Canada's got a big problem. It does not have the Constitution, so you do not have robust free speech protections. You do not have Second Amendment protections, so the government is able to do whatever they want. I wouldn't want to be Prime Minister of Canada. I wouldn't last very long. But between Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver, you have some of the most liberal cities on the planet, as you well know. Canada, I think, is bringing in like half of its population in the next decade in immigrants. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah, that's called the Century Initiative, and we talked about that briefly at the meeting in Selkirk on Saturday afternoon. Again, guys, we're going to be in Niverville this coming Saturday at the Niverville Friendship Center between 1 and 4 o'clock. Hopefully you'll be there. It's another information session regarding Winnipeg Metropolitan Region Plan 2050. The board of the WMR has yet to come out with a date for their second public meeting, and they have to give 40 days notice when they do that. So I get the feeling that it's not going to happen before the end of the year. We're hearing rumblings they're rewriting this whole plan. I don't know what they're going to put in it. I don't know what they're going to take out of it, but they're going to try and do some fancy finagling to make it look like we don't want your land. We don't want to tell you what to do. We don't want any of that. But we know better than that. And we'll be watching them very, very, very closely. Speaking of Justin Trudeau, Charlie says he'd fire him or deport him or whatever. This is the latest polling now from Main Street Research. Main Street came out with this poll late last week. And they say, if the federal election were held today, how would you vote? All voters, those undecided, those decided, those leaning, 40%, 40. This is nationally, including Quebec now. 40% said they would support the Conservative Party of Canada. 17% said Liberal. 17% said NDP. 7% said Bloc. 3% said Green. 2% said the People's Party of Canada. Another 2% said other parties. I think the Rhinoceros Party, that party with yogic flying, maybe, and the Marxist-Leninist Party. I really don't know. We're going to go down a couple of slides here and show you what I found to be interesting, because I thought this was completely different when they talk about when people want an election. Because the Liberals are saying, I don't know, Canadians don't want an election. And why is it, let me just ask you, that the left-wing corporate media, when they talk about a possible election, they always talk about it like it's going to be a drag. Well, I'm not sure who wants to be the one responsible for forcing an election. We want an election so bad we can taste it. But first, we need to know the names of the MPs and the senators. Not that we vote for senators, but we need to know the names of those people implicated in foreign interference so they can't run again. Not that we're going to find out unless we put pressure on them, which we haven't been doing enough of. But anyway, they say recently there was a non-confidence motion in the House of Commons too, actually, with another one coming up possibly if the Bloc doesn't get their way with the old age pension increase, and it doesn't look like they will, which, if passed by opposition parties, would result in an early election. Do you support the opposition parties, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Bloc voting to trigger an election together? 48% said yes, 40% said no, and 12%, I don't know. Like, seriously, man, how is there still 12% of people in this country? I don't know. Really? After everything that's happened in the past 4 years, and you don't know? You don't want to know? You're too busy to know? You don't care enough to know? I don't know. 48%. Not quite a majority, but definitely a plurality of people want an election, and they want it now. I'm not sure if this is the poll that actually asks if there were to be an election sooner than the election date. When would you like it? Is this the one? No, I don't think it is. Let me go down a little bit further. Oh, yeah, okay. So when would you want the election to take place? 42% said right now, fall, winter 2024. And then 32% said, no, we can wait for a year. Again, what are those people on? Seriously, they want this dysfunction to last for another year. I find that remarkable. 12% say they want it next spring. And 9% said winter of 2025? That's not even a possibility. Like, it has to be by next fall, not winter of 2025, or they mean like this coming winter, January 2025. That's where they lose me with this poll. But anyway, it looks like most people want an election, and they want it now, which is awesome. All right, let's talk about property rights, because not just Manitobans. I really get upset. People will email me occasionally and they'll say, Shadow, why do you spend so much time talking about one particular area when it comes to the smart city thing? I said, that's where the news is right now. I'm not hearing anything out of Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Toronto, any other city in this country of people actually standing up and fighting back against this smart city nonsense, except in Winnipeg. I happen to live here, so I'm a little bit more involved in this whole thing in terms of getting the word out to people on a personal level. That's cool. But you've got to remember that this smart city thing applies to every municipality in this country. And once again, I will say it to you. If you want to know if your community has got one of these plans, all you do is you can go to Google for this. Google's not hiding the results of this. Just type in the name of your city. Let's just say Aurelia. And then next to it, Plan 2050. Then click enter. What's going to happen after that is on page 1 of your Google search, either item 1 or item 2 will say, Aurelia Health Plan for 2050, Aurelia Transportation Smart Plan for 2050, Aurelia, Healthy City Plan, whatever, because they all have different names, but they've all got one, and they've all got a deadline to get these things implemented, just so you guys know. That's why all of the municipalities almost across this country have been quietly and quickly changing land use bylaws. We've heard it from so many municipalities all across the country now. So get involved, find out. That's the first thing that you need to do. Find out exactly what is going on in your community. Canadians' rights to property need additional protection. This comes from Christine Van Gyn. She's with the CCF. I think this is the Canadian Constitution Federation. That's, what are they called here? Policy options. Da, 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 da. Christine Van Gyn. Hang on a minute. Oh, well, we'll get to that in just a second when it comes up here. So Christine says, well, common law has largely protected property rights. The government still holds power in some forms of expropriation. So common law, keep that in mind for a second, because that goes back to the Magna Carta, man. The right to own property lies at the core of liberal democracy. Protections for property can be traced, back to the Magna Carta of 1215, the English Bill of Rights of 1689, and the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. Wow, have they changed, to which Canada is a signatory. Based on this, many Canadians may be surprised to learn that we do not have constitutionally protected property rights, particularly since our American neighbors do enjoy these protections. The absence of property rights from the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is not for want of trying. The entrenchment of property rights in the Constitution, believe it or not, was suggested by Pierre Elliott Trudeau when he proposed the charter in 1968 as Justice Minister, and again when he was Prime Minister during the negotiations that led to the charter signing in 1982. However, ultimately, it did not become part of the charter because of opposition from most of the provinces. Huh? Oh, I get it. The provinces want control. And we just let it happen. We let it happen back then. And here we are today. The lack of entrenchment of property rights does not mean Canadians do not have rights related to property. Canadians do have property rights found in common law and statute. Some of these protections are quite good. However, in the area of what's called de facto expropriation, much work still needs to be done. A de facto expropriation, also known as constructive or regulatory taking, occurs when title to the land does not change, but there is, in all other senses, an expropriation. For example, when government places restrictions on the use of land without formally taking the property. The Supreme Court is considering this issue in a case called Annapolis Group, Inc. versus Halifax Regional Municipality. The Canadian Constitution Foundation, that's where she works. A legal charity dedicated to defending individual rights and freedoms is intervening in this case. The common law, we argue, recognizes that all Canadians have broad rights to own, use, and enjoy property and guards against authorized government interference. All taking of property by government must be validly authorized either by the clear terms of the statute or under the Crown prerogative relating to the defense of the realm. For example, both federal and provincial expropriations legislation require compensation for property expropriated by the government. Think of property expropriated to build new highways, like when the 407 in Ontario was built, or to expand hospitals. But whether authorized by statute or under Crown prerogative, expropriation triggers a presumptive common law right to compensation that can be rebutted only by clear statutory language to the contrary. While it's sometimes suggested that this right to compensation is based only in statute, we argue case law demonstrates otherwise. So she goes on to talk about different cases that have happened throughout the years that have set a precedent. Bottom line here is what she's saying is the government can't come and take your property unless they've got a reason to. So what they're doing with all of these new land use laws and bylaws is coming up with reasons. Oh, land density, water usage, this, that, the other. And they're putting it down on the record so they have something to go to when they do take your land in a court case going forward. So what we need are constitutional protections of our land to say, no, you can't take it at all. We own it. We bought it. We paid for it. And by the way, we're not going to pay tax on it anymore either. Somebody brought up allodial title to me this past weekend, and this is something I've had on the show before. Doug Force came on, if you guys recall, a few years ago and talked about allodial title, and I went, oh, well, that's interesting. So what is it? Just what is it and where does it come from? In English common law, and we just went through common law here, right? The concept seems to have lost its meaning. Not too many people seem to know what it means. Just legal scholars and historians have an interest in the subject. This comes from OntarioRealEstateSource.com, by the way. Today, there are really two different definitions of the term, and it depends upon whether you're discussing public or private property. In respect to public property, the concept has ancient origins, actually predating the common law and the feudal system in the Middle Ages. Property which was occupied and held by force against others was held in allodium. Basically, that means without any restriction, any kind of nature whatsoever. People would come across unoccupied vacant land and would simply put their flag down. There was no one around, no one to say they could have it, no one to grant permission, no one to sign a deed. In this regard, might was right. Feudalism, right? I have a bigger gun, so this is mine, and you can't have it. And if you come and try and take it, I'll, you know. If you had the property and could defend it against others, then it was yours in allodium. Since there was no place to register your title, it was simply acknowledged that you held allodial title. That simply meant that you had no deed. To a certain extent, the concept of allodial title is just legal fiction. It doesn't really exist in the legal system, that is. But it does exist in common law. It is simply a method of comparing it to other properties and helping to understand the differences between it and fee simple. So let's have a quick look at the feudal system from medieval times. The king owned all the land. Now, in Canada, what do they call unoccupied government land? They call it crown land, right? So the king still owns all the land. It's different in the United States. He leased it out to his tenants, and they sublet it to others and so on in a grand pyramid scheme. You definitely would want to be near the top of this. In 1066, William the Conqueror from France succeeded in the Battle of Hastings. He made significant changes to the feudal system, and by 1215, the first of a series of Magna Cartas was passed. This restricted the role of the king and is considered to be the first constitution of England. Within the next century, substantial changes were made to the property system. Tenure gave way to estates. So rather than leasing land from the king, people who occupied land were considered to hold some ownership rights, estates, in the land. The estates could be restricted or limited in some way. It could be present or future. It could be temporary, a leasehold estate, or it could be full ownership with all the bells and whistles that go with it. This kind of estate was referred to as fee simple. This was the highest estate anyone could have. It was subject to certain rights in favor of the king, but other than that, it was completely unrestricted. Basically, there were 4 rights retained by the king. A property would be, number 1, subject to the right of the king to require servitude from the property. Number 2, subject to the right of the king to repossess the property. Number 3, subject to the right of the king to inherit the property. And number 4, subject to the right of the king to regulate the property. These are now sometimes referred to as taxation, expropriation, escheat, and eminent domain. So in the English common law system, an estate in fee simple is as good as it gets. But you had to get this estate from somewhere. In fact, you got it originally from the king. There was a deed or a grant. There was an actual piece of paper. It was evidence of your ownership. The only way that could happen is if you had a legal system and everyone agreed to go along with the rules. So let's go back to the concept of allodial title. First, there is no one around. The place is vacant. You could probably go an entire lifetime without ever seeing anyone other than from your own family or clan. Land is not scarce, people are. There's no legal system, there's no registry office, no one keeps records of anything. So to have allodial title is simply to own your land by occupancy. Actually, the only way that you can hold title this way is if you're a country. There are no deeds. Other countries simply accept that they will not claim your land since you're likely to defend it. There is one other concept of allodial title, but it applies to private ownership. To a certain extent, it's just a historical concept. Land that was unowned, perhaps in the Wild West prior to settlement, or perhaps native or aboriginal lands that were occupied prior to the European immigration in the 16th century. There are just a few states and none of the provinces that continue to maintain a concept of allodial title. Most have abolished the concept. At best, it was really pseudo-allodial title. It was possible to receive a grant in favor of a person specifying allodial title. Recently, the state of Nevada will permit such a grant in limited circumstances, provided the individual pays up their property taxes in advance. But the concept of a grant is foreign to the concept of allodial ownership. Allodial title is completely free and clear of all obligations, liens, encumbrances, taxes, mortgages, and the like. However, where it's still recognized either historically or presently, it's still a rather pseudo-allodial title, since the four basic restrictions that apply to fee simple ownership apply to it as well: taxation, expropriation, escheat, and eminent domain. So do we have allodial title in this country? Not within the system, we don't. I can't say we don't for sure, but not within the system that Canada is governed by do we have allodial title. Let's change the subject now to Jasper. There is an inquiry going on that's made its way to the House of Commons regarding the Jasper fires earlier this year. Apparently, the government was not listening to experts when it came to how to put this fire out or how to stop it from starting in the first place. Watch this video, this stunning video of a parliamentary committee hearing testimony from a fire chief who says 50 highly skilled, qualified firefighters and 20 fire trucks were obstructed by Parks Canada fire management from entering to assist with the Jasper wildfire in Alberta. This is astonishing.
Throughout the Jasper fire, we encountered numerous examples of Parks Canada fire management actively obstructing our activities and not providing us with relevant information on the fire.
And you had the fire trucks and the water trucks available in order to engage the fire in Jasper in the town site, correct?
That's correct.
And you were told specifically that you could not access, and you were told specifically by Parks officials to not engage in fighting the fire in Jasper. Did I hear you say that correctly?
We were able to use water from Pyramid Lake, but not from Athabasca River, and we were not allowed to engage the fire.
20 fire trucks, 50 firefighters, not allowed to engage the fire.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start off with Mr. Leavam. You had said that you were not legally allowed to be there. Could you explain why you were not?
That's what was explained to us by the operations section chief, the second in command to the incident commander. As far as I know, we were allowed to be there because this was through the Parks Canada liaison person and our client that made these arrangements for us to be in there. I guess there's no legislative process to allow contract firefighters be in there on behalf of other parties. Must be the reasoning for that. But we did not show up there unanticipated. This was arrangements that were made on behalf of our client Pursuit and Parks Canada before we showed up. It's not like we show up at the door and managed to be let in like barbarians. It was our expectation that when we got to the gate that we were supposed to be permitted to go in to do our job to help protect the economic engine of Jasper.
Hang on a minute. I forgot. There is more. So let's get to this last 30 seconds.
Fires or not?
Yes. The crew that we had in there were all NFPA 1001 firefighters. The majority of them are part of active volunteer fire departments. So yes, the crew that I had in Jasper that night were all qualified 1001 firefighters.
So you're all qualified, but yet you were asked to leave and not assist with any structural fires then?
Yes.
So they didn't say anything about that you didn't have the capabilities to tie into the hydrants or the proper fittings or anything that way. There was no reason other than just please leave.
That's right.
All right. So that sounds a little bit like what's going on in the Appalachians right now. And we're going to get to that in just a second. Meanwhile, how did this look in the House of Commons late last week?
$2 million to fight forest fires with Parks Canada. What we've done in the last few years, $85 million to help fight forest fires, to give means to our forest firing force at Parks Canada to work with the Alberta government, to work with the city of Jasper. $2 million on their side, $85 million on our side, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up, and incompetence is up. The Minister of the Environment ignored the science, and as a result, Jasper burned. The proof? His own executives were caught discussing cancelling prescribed burns for political optic reasons. Yet prescribed burns are an essential tool for preventing wildfires. Will this minister accept responsibility for his failure and apologize to the 2,000 residents of Jasper who have lost their homes and their businesses?
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
What the member opposite just said is simply not true. And if I wasn't in this House, I would probably be using another word. There's been 15 prescribed burns in the last 10 years, Madam Speaker, and the email he's referring to are Parks Canada employee discussing whether or not to use mechanical removals or prescribed burns. What he's saying is absolutely false, and he should be ashamed, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, the Minister of Environment claims to be proud of his preparations for the catastrophic Jasper wildfire, yet 1/3 of Jasper was destroyed. $1 billion in damages, 2,000 people homeless. It can hardly be described as a success. Everyone knew Jasper was a tinderbox. My former colleague Jim Maglinski even tried to warn the government in this House as far back as 2016, yet not enough was done to protect the town of Jasper. How many more parks need to burn down before this minister is replaced by somebody who knows how fire works?
Okay. Then we had this gem between Trudeau and Polyev, and this is a classic.
Mr. Speaker, he pretends you can put out forest fires with taxes. Clearly that has not worked. Rather, what he should have done is listen to his own officials who said that the mass buildup of fuel in the Jasper Valley as a result of dead trees needed to be addressed through controlled burns and other clearing methods, and also preparation so that we would have the ability to fight the fire if and when it ever started. All of this is documented in email correspondence and now testimony at a parliamentary committee. Instead of taxing Canadians into poverty, why didn't he fight forest fires?
Okay, so the reason I'm playing this for you guys is because Trudeau almost blows a gasket in this response and spouts some of the most egregious nonsense I've ever seen come out of his mouth. And that's saying a lot.
Jasper was one of the most fire-smart communities in the country. Over the past years, residents and leaders within Jasper have been exemplary in making sure they were doing everything they could to protect their community. This fire, Mr. Speaker, was a treetop fire. It jumped from treetop to treetop and through flaming pine cones kilometers into ahead of it, which is what.
Okay. Does he not understand what a treetop fire is? Yes, it's possible. It's possible that a fire can start on a treetop through a lightning strike or something, I guess. But does he not understand also that there is gravity involved? Is he suggesting that this fire just burned the tops of the trees and not the twigs and the bushes that needed clearing and controlled burning at the base of these trees? Is that actually what he is trying to make people believe here, that gravity does not exist, that fire will not come down once a branch breaks or the leaves come tumbling down? He's actually saying that the fire just burned the top of the trees and then jumped to the next tree and burned the top of that tree and so on and so on. That's what he's trying to say here. Like, how stupid does he think we are?
Let's set this burn. This is a result of climate change, Mr. Speaker. Climate change. He doesn't want to fight.
And the histrionics.
Mr. Speaker, that kind of erratic screaming and hollering is not going to tackle the problem of forest fires, screaming about flying pine cones, etc. It's true. The people of Jasper were fire smart. The problem is that the government in Ottawa was fire stupid. They were warned. This government was warned repeatedly over 7 years that they needed to clear the dead wood to prevent the spread of a future fire. Why, instead of bringing in a crippling carbon tax, didn't he clear away the wood and stop leaving a tinderbox to explode?
That's enough of that. That's it. It was a treetop fire, and he doesn't want to fight climate change. Mr. Speaker, I love the way Poilievre handled that. When Trudeau starts to rant and rave, you become even quieter than you were before. More calm and more in control. It's far more prime ministerial, don't you think? And somebody ranting and raving. I mean, imagine the still pictures of that. How you would look. If the left-wing corporate media actually had any integrity at all, they would put some of those pictures up, as opposed to pictures of Trudeau sitting with some world leader showing off his socks. RCMP confirms ongoing investigation into SDTC scandal. SDTC is also the Green Slush Fund scandal, the one that we've been hearing about through the work of MPs in committee all summer long. And this is why our government currently is at a standstill. Well, they're not completely at a standstill. They're only at a standstill when it comes to government business, not with the business of private members' bills or the business of opposition bills still slowly working their way through the House of Commons, and we'll get to that in just a second. RCMP Commissioner Mike Duhaime has confirmed the federal police force is currently investigating a scandal involving the Liberal government allegedly distributing tens of millions of taxpayers' dollars to ineligible companies. Police have said they're looking at whether there's any criminal wrongdoing associated with the Sustainable Development Technology Canada scandal. In comments made to reporters last Thursday, Duhaime confirmed the RCMP have received documents pertinent to the scandal and is currently conducting an investigation into the matter. He says, we did receive the documents and investigations are ongoing, so I'll limit my comments to that. Wait a minute. Did they get all of the documents? Or did they only get some of the documents? In June, just before the House of Commons summer recess, the Conservative Party, with the help of the Bloc, the NDP, and the Greens, passed a motion calling on the Trudeau government to surrender all relevant documents to the House's law clerk, who would then hand over the documents to the RCMP. The Trudeau government has defied this order from the House, resulting in a condemnation from Liberal House Speaker Greg Fergus. Government business in the House of Commons has ground to a screeching halt and will only resume once the Trudeau government complies with the order. Opposition House Leader Andrew Scheer celebrated the news that there was an investigation while demanding the Liberals release the SDTC files to the House. RCMP say they're investigating Liberal slush fund, Liberal insiders funnel, blah, 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 blah. And apparently they did not give all of the documents to the RCMP, or sorry, the House clerk, and then give them to the RCMP. That's why the House of Commons is frozen right now when it comes to government business. Even though the Liberals go on X and they say, well, the RCMP's got the documents. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Now, this bill, C-293, you guys have been making a lot of noise about, and congratulations to you for doing so. People need to know about this bill. This bill is an independent members bill, not issued by an independent, private members bill. Not issued by an independent member, a Liberal member of caucus put this. Erskine Smith, I think his name is, Nathaniel Erskine Smith, a Liberal, but it's a private member's bill. So it still can work its way through Parliament. And it's alarming to see how close it is to actually becoming passed. Now, if the Liberals decide they're going to prorogue Parliament so they can hang on to power by the skin of their teeth, then this bill will never see the light of day, or it'll have to start again from scratch. So let's hope that's what happens, or an election happens. Because if this bill makes it, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois is known as the health doctor on X, and he writes, is Bill C-293 Canada's Vegan Act? What? The bill represents an unprecedented governmental intrusion into personal dietary choices and market dynamics. I wonder what they want. No more meat. But let's read the story here, or this opinion. It's almost conceivable that Bill C-293 remains largely unknown among Canadians given its potential to significantly expand governmental powers in response to future pandemics. A detailed examination of the bill does more than sow confusion about its intentions. It reveals a troubling spirit at its core. Bill C-293, a private member's bill recently advanced through the House of Commons with little resistance, purports to bolster Canada's pandemic preparedness. Yet, a deeper analysis exposes provisions that could disastrously impact the agriculture and agri-food sector, which are vital to our national economy and food security. Under this bill, public health officials could have the authority to close facilities they consider high risk, meat packing plants during the pandemics, and even mandate the consumption of vegetable proteins by Canadians or some other kind of protein that they're making in bulk in London, Ontario right now. An insect that chirps, measures that border on the absurd. And yet the BC NDP is all over X, calling John Rustad, the leader of the BC Conservative Party, a crazy conspiracy theory for even suggesting any of this. It's amazing. This is why 32% of people, and dropping, only trust the left-wing corporate media in this country. It's hardly surprising the private member bill the private member who introduced this bill is Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, who is known for his vegan lifestyle. Oh, right. When you're a vegetarian, everybody else has to be one. If you're a progressive, that is. If you're a Marxist. If you're a conservative vegetarian, you don't care what anybody else eats. The ease with which this legislation passed highlights disconcerting disconnection and dysfunction within our parliament, where normally proposals of such magnitude would undergo extensive debate and scrutiny. Currently, the Senate, which is now reviewing Bill C-293, is inundated with more than 120 letters daily from concerned groups and citizens, all apprehensive about the bill's broad regulatory reach and its implications. One of the most alarming aspects of the bill is the discretionary power it would grant to officials to shut down agriculture facilities without clear objective criteria. Such arbitrary actions could disrupt not only meat supply chains, but also the wider agricultural operations linked to them, including feed production. This threatens to destabilize related sectors and could trigger cascading effects throughout the entire food system. Moreover, legislating the consumption of vegetable proteins represents an unprecedented governmental intrusion into personal dietary choices and market dynamics. This could severely disrupt the economic balance of the agri-food sector, adversely affecting everyone from livestock producers to participants in traditional protein markets. By the way, go see if you can find any energy bars or whey protein powder that is like animal protein these days. I'm having a hell of a time finding it. It's all vegan, and I don't want vegan protein. I'd rather have my protein from a cow, thank you, or a chicken or a pig. Additionally, the bill seeks to regulate and possibly phase out certain farming practices considered high risk for pandemic propagation. This could abruptly alter farming operations, affect livelihoods, and hinder the economic stability of numerous producers, making a transition to purportedly safer practices impractical. How close is this bill to passing? We'll get to that in just a second. Now, what you're seeing from the left-wing corporate media and a lot of the left-wing activists out there when it comes to defending Bill C-293 is, it's not an attack on eating your steak. You can have your steak if you want. We don't care about your meat packing. We just want to be safe during a pandemic. Right? That's what they're saying. That's what I'm seeing a lot of on social media. So I found this from the World Animal Protection website, worldanimalprotection.ca. Bill C-293 passes to committee. What's next? Well, first of all, never have to read this stuff. It's gone through all this committee. What is the Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act, and why should we care? Again, this is from worldanimalprotection.ca. The Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act will help curb the commercial wildlife trade and factory farming in order to prevent future pandemics. It will also help prevent animal suffering and biodiversity loss. So they confirm it right here because it's written in the bill. You know what the worst thing about politicians is? The egregious lying they do and the gaslighting. When something is written as clear as day in a bill or a proposal or whatever they're trying to get past us, when we say, oh, by the way, what about this right here that says the UN is actually in control of your policy? I don't know what you're talking about. Did you even read the thing? Yeah, I did actually. And I'm looking at it right now. It's right here. Do you see that? Oh, I don't know what's the matter with you. You're just lying now. They will actually say things like that. I don't even believe that they can do that. As a human being, to be that obtuse would be remarkably limiting, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm sure it would be good in some things, like you'd be able to pay full and complete attention to one thing for a long period of time. Like if you're driving a car, you'd be like David Putty from Seinfeld. David, do you want a book? No, I'm good. Like if they were really like that, I think that they know it's in there, but they just refuse to acknowledge it. Because if they acknowledge it, then we got them. But the thing is, it's right here. I don't see it. La, 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 la. How do they sleep at night, these people? I don't have any idea. How close is this bill to passing? We need a parliament prorogue or we need an election. It's passed first, second, and third reading in the House of Commons, and in the Senate, it's passed its first reading. That was done back in June. There is no activity, at least right now, on second reading or third reading. It could take months yet to get this thing passed. So we keep our fingers crossed and hope this government falls and we can get rid of all this nonsense. However, according to a headline on the CBC, it looks like the Liberals who have been threatened by the Bloc Québécois to enact an increase to old age security, or else the Bloc themselves will call a non-confidence vote at the end of this month. I believe their deadline is October 29th. The Liberals are working on a pension proposal to appease the Bloc and avert this early election. But, and this headline is misleading because there is no story that goes with it for starters. The only thing that does go with it is this 14-minute, 23-second panel video of them guessing that maybe the Liberals might try and come up with some kind of pension proposal to keep the Bloc satisfied. So this headline makes it look like the Liberals are actually doing it. But we don't have any verification of that whatsoever. Interesting, isn't it? Alleged ISIS terrorist applied for refugee status in Canada as a gay man. What's next? Despite allegedly planning to carry out the Islamic State of Iraq and Al-Sham terrorist attack, a man caught in Canada with plans to kill as many Jews in New York as possible allegedly was applying for refugee status in Canada, claiming he was gay. 20-year-old Mohammed Shahzeeb Khan, an international student from Pakistan studying in Canada, is accused of plotting a mass shooting attack to slaughter as many Jewish civilians as possible around the one-year marking of October 7th, 2023. Today happens to be that day, by the way. Hamas-led terror attack on Israel. Khan was originally in Canada on a study permit he applied for in March. After being approved as an international student, Khan landed in Toronto June 23rd last year. Immigration officials have said Khan didn't raise any red flags during his immigration application. As reported by the CBC, his immigration consultant told the public broadcaster the alleged ISIS terrorist was in the process of claiming refugee status in Canada because he was gay. Do gay people get fast-tracked? I guess if you're gay from the Middle East, your life may be in mortal danger, so you could be fast-tracked as a refugee. Khan is currently detained in Montreal in jail. At the same time, the U.S. seeks his extradition to face a charge of attempting to provide material support and resources to a designated terror group, ISIS. According to an RCMP report, the RCMP and the FBI began a joint investigation on September 4th, which led to Khan's arrest in Ormstown, Quebec. All right. Speaking of October 7th, the anniversary of today, this was a video taken by our friend Chris Dacey of Dacey Media this past weekend at a protest on Parliament Hill, or maybe a celebration, or I don't know what it was exactly, but it was for Palestinians only, apparently, at least on this part of the hill. And this video is video of an officer of Parliament Protection Services, talking to somebody who was trying to get in, at least on the grounds of the House of Commons, but not being allowed because he doesn't support the Palestinian state. Watch. Okay, so here's the officer in question talking to this guy here, who apparently is not a supporter of the Palestinian state, so he's not allowed on the public grounds of his country's Capitol building.
Of Palestine, you are not permitted on. Yeah, that was before you admitted being against this cause over here.
You never said he was against this cause.
Yeah, you did. You said he's not a supporter of Palestine and doesn't recognize Palestine as a state.
I didn't say that.
But do we want to rewind the video and see?
Well, there's no audio in the actual.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. But no. So you said it. So you said it to me. My colleague understood.
Yeah,
I
said
clearly.
I don't accept Palestine as a state. That doesn't mean I'm anti-Palestinian people.
You don't recognize, and you said you don't support Palestine. Okay.
I don't recognize Palestine as a state.
You said if he
took the shoe. Told me if I were to take the shirt off, I could come in.
Well, that was before you changed your story to I don't support Palestine and I don't recognize Palestine as a state.
Look, I'm not wearing anything that's inflammatory.
Hold on.
And I just want to do interviews.
Hold on. Then at the end, right before I left, I said, you are not to go on this side. Right?
No, you said I'm not
free speech.
infringement
free speech. Then after, no, I'm not.
Yeah, this is very tyrannical.
You can believe that if you wish.
Well, it
You want
is.
to come on the Parliament Hill? Other side.
So to be on this side, do you need to declare your support for Palestine? Is that a prerequisite to be over here?
Well, you declared that you're against it.
No, he never declared he was against it. No, he didn't.
We're sorry, you did.
I mean,
No, he didn't.
how are...
The shirt and the Louis Vuitton. But you're not
Saying he doesn't.
So basically what this is are police officers trying to stop somebody from going and causing problems in the Palestinian celebration or gathering or whatever it is they're having. But at the same time, you are violating this man's constitutional rights based upon his political beliefs, which is something you cannot do. Not in this country. That's a constitutional violation. But these officers don't seem to care about that, do they?
To recognize Palestine as a state is not declaring he's against Palestine. You guys this is gross miscarriage.
Are you speaking for him?
I'm speaking for myself. This is a miscarriage.
Have I said that you're not allowed? Have I said anything to you?
No, but I'm calling it as I see it.
Right now.
That's an interesting conundrum, and I'm happy to see that video getting so much traction on social media because it does present a question. You know, a lot of people have said, well, if we are about freedom and free speech and everything that entails, then should these people, as long as they're within the boundaries of the law, be allowed to go ahead and protest or support whatever it is they're supporting? If they say intifada, some people say, well, that's obviously a declaration of war against the Jewish state. No, technically it's not. Some people say it doesn't mean that when they say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. All of that. There are some interpretations of it that are completely different. But this is supposed to be a free country with freedom of speech. So should they be allowed to speak their mind as long as it's lawful and constitutional? Then yes. Should police be allowed to bar somebody from going to witness it? No, based upon their political beliefs, especially. Suspicion of causing trouble, that's a thought crime, and that's overreach. Speaking of immigration, we're going to get into more of this on the extension on shadowdavis.com for you guys, all access members. We're also going to cover a lot of what's been going on in the Appalachians. Apparently, there's all kinds of bodies that have yet to be recovered. And worse still, the government is not allowing people into these areas to go and get their loved ones. And these bodies have been there since Hurricane Helene hit a week ago. And apparently in certain areas down there, the smell is becoming overwhelming as well. It's a mess down there. And of course, FEMA is dropping the ball once again because allegedly they gave all their money to resettle illegal aliens. So it's turned into a nightmare down there. And some people are claiming it has to do with all the lithium that is in the ground in that area of the United States. The largest lithium plants or lithium mines in the world that would be great for building electric car batteries. And some people are even suggesting that Elon Musk is in on this somehow, using directed energy weapons to get that lithium. And this is where it gets really crazy. So we're going to cover all of that stuff in the extension on shadowdavis.com in just a second. But speaking about immigration, here's what Donald Trump had to say about it.
Springfield is such a beautiful place. Have you seen what's happened to it? It's been overrun. You can't do that to people. They have to be removed.
So you would revoke the temporary protected status?
Absolutely. I'd revoke it and I'd bring them back to their country.
Yes, he would revoke it and he would deport. Deport. Largest mass deportation in American history. We'll start with Donald Trump. Is he in the cabal with Elon Musk and with Benjamin Netanyahu? Now, that would be the cabal that we all know and we've been living in for whatever the last 40, 50, or 60 years, however long we've been on the planet. And the other cabal is the communist totalitarian World Economic Forum / China cabal that we don't want any part of. And then there may be a third cabal in operation as well out of the Middle East or Africa with all the money over there. Still haven't quite figured that out yet. And maybe all of those three cabals are being operated by one single family at the very tip top of all this, the pyramid scheme. I don't know, guys. It's crazy. We're going to explore all of that stuff, including, by the way, this document here, National Defense University Press, directed energy weapons are real and disruptive. We're going to cover all of this in the extension on shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. So join us there, become a member and join us there, and we'll see you there very, very soon. If not, we'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. I love you all. I appreciate you all, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.